Welcome to the Living Consciously TV show. We're coming to you live from our Denver, Colorado studios. I'm your host and your moderator, Coach Steve Toth. And our theme today is why we interpret our everyday experiences in the way we do. Let me introduce you to our guest cast, as well as our entire health cast. Our guest cast today is Lee Gerdes. He's the founder and CEO of Brain State Technologies, and he's joining us from the beautiful Scottsdale, Arizona area. Welcome to the show, Lee.
Thank you.
And we also have on the left of Lee, Ninan DeVer-DeRosa, and she's also part of our healthcast, and she's joining us from that great place called Las Vegas, Nevada. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be with you and great to be with Lee.
And last but not least, of course, Helen Kerrison. Well, actually, we have Janet. Let me introduce Janet. She's right next to me. I don't know how I missed you.
I don't know.
You're right here.
I'm blending in.
So it's Janet Cook, who is also our HealthCast member, and she's actually living here in Colorado, in Denver. So
in Denver.
It's really easy for her to pop into the studio. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Awesome, thank you. And then now I'm supposed to say last but not least, Helen Kerrison. She is our HealthCast member from our European studio, Brussels, Belgium. Welcome to the show, Helen.
Thanks, Steve. Great to be with you all.
Everybody's awesome. All right, so here's how the show will go. In the first segment, we will have a dialogue about what are the issues and the problems with the way we interpret our everyday experiences. And then in the second segment, we'll have a dialogue about the tools and modalities that all of our cast members, as well as our guest cast, have used either for themselves or for their clients to be able to better manage our mind. So my leading question for Lee is, why is it that 99% of humanity is running around in a resistive posture like we are in some kind of a matrix?
There's a number of suppositions that one could ponder with that question. One is, what if we are all totally conscious all the time, however, we have a barrier to that consciousness that is actually our brain and its function? So if that's the case, then if our brain wasn't functioning, pretty in a pretty balanced state, we wouldn't be conscious. So it's a different way, I think, to kind of think about it. And I think it's helpful to think about it that way because we can see people who are very explosive or imploding or distraught, and then we can see their brain patterns change, and immediately when that happens, they are no longer distraught. And so they are the same person when they were distraught as they were once their brain pattern changed. However, they didn't know that while the brain pattern was in chaos. So none of us, I think, have a very easy time of it regarding connecting to that consciousness.
So do you feel that we're constantly do you feel that we're constantly resisting
The brain gets in the way.
The brain gets in the way.
I thought life got in the way. Now I know the brain is.
Well, life feeds the brain, I guess, huh?
Absolutely.
So what are we all resisting, Lee? What is all this reaction? We're constantly reacting to something.
I don't know that it's our resistance, but I think the brain certainly has strong resistance. Its job is to keep us alive. And so it's done, a reasonably good job for humanity over the last millions of years as it's evolved. But it carries some of traditional patterns for all that time. And if we look at it simply, one of those patterns is kind of freeze, playing possum. One of those patterns is fight or flight. As soon as a trauma hits that threatens our life, or that we believe threatens our life. So maybe it's just a natural pattern from the brain to stay alive.
Because we seem to get distracted, you know, when we talk about we're sort of doing something and then we get distracted, which means the brain is being distracted to something else, so therefore we're not paying attention to what we were doing in the first place. And I find that happens with myself, not a lot, but it does happen with me when I'm kind of doing things and then I get distracted. And that's obviously the movement of the brain. How and why, Lee?
Well, it's interesting that when we talk about distraction, we talk about the brain. When we talk about consciousness, we're more apt to talk about something beyond that, huh?
Correct.
And so maybe when we're talking about being distracted, we're talking about the very thing that's the barrier to consciousness. In other words, the brain that's not really well balanced. If that's the case, then it would make sense that we could easily be distracted. Our networks wouldn't be balanced enough to process readily.
Mm-hmm.
It's like trying to stay focused. You know, you want to stay focused on whether it's your job or your whatever it may be. And sometimes, well, a lot of times, people don't get from A to B very fast.
So let me get us present to like a real example, because I think just talking about this isn't going to do it. So let me share an example that just happened with me recently. So I was in a conversation with somebody I work with, and that somebody was actually giving me some great ideas and great openings in terms of and possibilities how to grow my business. And I noticed the way he was saying it, I received it this way, that he was criticizing what I've done for the last 8 years. I went into immediately a disconnected mode. I disconnected from myself. I disconnected from him. And I was full of fear inside of myself. It's like, what the heck? It's like
What happened, right?
I've been working on this thing for 8 years, and now you're telling me that what I have today is no good.
It's nothing. Well, to him it was nothing. To you it was something.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what it was for him. I wouldn't even want to go there because half the time, 99.9% of the time, I can't even figure out what I'm doing. Not alone trying to think what somebody else is doing. But I just noticed within my energy dropped. I got disconnected from him, from the conversation, and I just went into this resistive mode of
Not
fear.
listening?
Not listening, fear, and I wanted to protect what I built.
You blocked him out totally because you didn't
and
want to
I
hear him.
completely dropped out of the conversation. So what does the brain has to do with that, Lee?
Well, you just were seriously threatened. And then the brain said, I'll just cut off from that threat. Thank you very much. Yeah, next.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know if that's bad or not.
But why did he do it? Why did he immediately do, instead of listening to maybe having a good conversation and listening rather than shutting him off? Why did he shut off? Yes, because he didn't like it, but why did he really shut off, brain-wise?
I think because some of it was new information. I think.
Right.
Was it? Was that accurate? Was it new information to you?
So Lee, here's the magic. Okay, what happened next?
Is it new information that's sort of imposed on old patterns, and the old patterns are the most familiar?
Yes, it was almost like what he was describing. You know how sometimes people say that we're afraid of success? Okay, he was actually drawing pictures for me, and well, I was actually drawing it for myself based on what he was saying, and it scared me for a moment. And then here's where the magic was. Then he says, Steve, he turned to me and he says, Steve,
Listen to me.
come over here. Come over here to my heart. You know, I'm not trying to hurt you. What I'm saying to you and what I want for you is actually to succeed, is to actually create something. What you have is awesome. And it can be, it's its awesomeness is unlimited.
So you felt he could have actually used different words and said the same thing would have been more passive for you and more understanding for you?
I don't think any of this has anything to do with him. It had everything to do with me.
Well, what he said, though, your reaction. If he said
Well,
it in a
what he
different
said,
way.
what he said, he reminded me that I was disconnected, and he reminded me to get connected back up, to connect it back to love of myself and love of him,
And love of the work.
and love of the work and love of the world, and that there is really nothing scary about this. And it was amazing. I mean, the transformation was amazing in the moment.
So I'm curious that when you were experiencing all those emotions and all in that place, I'm curious for Lee, what was happening in his brain? If you were scanning his brain, Steve's brain, while all that was happening, would there be patterns to where that you could actually see all the fear coming up, or would there be spikes, or how would that look?
Not very pretty.
That's a good.
Off the chart, yes.
And he didn't feel it was that either. It sounds like once he got, his hands around it. And that's a great story, because the threat initially caused a certain disconnect, which may well have been, and I would have had to have equipment and see the pattern at the time. It probably was more of a freeze response than a fight or flight response, but I don't know that unless I looked at the brain. But one or the other, it's still disconnecting. So he had an opportunity to not be disconnected too far. The table didn't tip over, it just tilted a little. And if it was tipped over, it would have been a different issue.
And then what would you do when your table's tipped over? I mean, if that's something's happening.
If it's tipped over too far, it's very difficult to bring it back.
And what do we do? Yeah.
I mean, that's the work we do when we resonate with the brain patterns. But in terms of coaching or therapy or even given it time, it's hard. It's very difficult.
How would our audiences, the people that are watching the show, how would they know if we could give an example what it would look like if their table was tipped over? I'd be curious. What would we be looking at?
They would have some autonomic responses.
Which are?
Autonomic responses in the body would work with the freeze response, because you would get cold hands often. Mm-hmm. Your heart rate would be low. You would have digestive issues often. That's those things, and you would be depressive. Those are more of a freeze response.
Would it be the same for a man as it would be for a woman? Do we perceive things differently than to a man if the same thing was said and done?
You don't perceive things the same? Absolutely not.
Hey guys, got it going.
Sounds like experience talking.
And what would be the difference, Lee?
Oh, I'm going to get shot for this one.
Oh, no. This is for our audience. I'm not taking this personally.
Okay, well, it won't. You probably will, because it's very good for you in terms that a female brain has a corpus callosum that's much more permeable. That's the midline of the brain. It's much more permeable than a male's. And so a female can multitask much better. And because of that permeability, energy will travel left to right and right to left much faster than it will for a male. So you're good multitaskers, right? You can hold a baby, talk on the phone, make dinner, and plan tomorrow's menu at the same time. And when I tell you that, the hair stands up right on the back of my neck right now.
So in other words, what I'm saying, then we as women should not get mad at men when they don't comprehend as fast as we do, because we comprehend very fast. So we should not get upset with them. So we shouldn't get upset with them. Good. No, this is a good lesson to stop all the arguments and divorces, maybe, because we have to understand them a little more.
Can you believe if we're watching a ball game and you say, like, honey, what would you want for dinner? And we don't answer you. It's not because we don't like you. It's because we don't hear you. We don't go out of our zone. We're connected.
Very good. Very good. I like that. So, see, guys, we're sorry. You don't understand and can't do two things at one time.
Now, if we're watching a sportcast, right? But if they come at us and say, "Would you like to have sex?" Would we hear that one?
Yes, you would.
Yes, you would.
Lee.
They're likely.
Selective hearing.
Doesn't it depend on the tone of voice as well? You know?
So, by the way, since we are talking to someone that's an expert on the brain, I got to ask this question about why is it that most men, I mean, I don't feel I do this anymore as much as I used to, but what are the statistics? Like every 90 seconds or 45 seconds, every man is thinking about sex. What is that about?
Only Lee could answer that one.
Very sexy.
I think first of all, that changes over time. We know that. And the brain changes over time. It has more points of reference. If you take a 23-year-olds and 63-year-olds were put in, given the same information under an fMRI, a functional magnetic resonance imaging. Why? Because they wanted to measure where in the brain the connections were made in order for the person to respond to that new information, okay, on the computer screen. The 23-year-old went receive, consider, execute. The 63-year-old went receive, consider, execute. 13-3.
Wow.
That's called wisdom. And sometimes that affects more some functioning. It just makes it better, I think.
So does that means then in corporate companies and everything, you have a lot of older folks there that have obviously they can understand a problem and they can circulate it and let it work more rather than come to a fast decision as a young person would do.
That's true. That's true in many areas, but in many areas it's not. For instance, you can't build those points of reference for technology as easily unless you've grown up with technology. And so you see many younger people in tech companies that are the head of the company, right?
Correct.
That's why. It's because they've built points of reference to consider input, where older people who haven't had the technology background don't have those points of reference.
I'm interested also as to whether the more you consider something, does that naturally mean that you get a better reaction or action at the end of it?
Lee's considering.
He's considering.
Round and round.
It's not gone through 26 times.
He's older, it took time to think.
Well, the more you consider something, the more you plan something, if that's the state of consideration you're talking about, the more you're planning something, the less likely you are to have severely negative consequences of that action.
But then if you take
how does sorry Neil, how does sort of that intuition come into it, that gut feeling which actually enables you to just know and take action on something? How does that fit in with the brain and all this stuff that's going on?
Oh, it's a beautiful thing, actually. You can measure it in the brain.
Wow.
And it's quite exciting, because when you remove the static, that intuition can be much greater. It is counterintuitive to understand that the more high-performing we are, actually, the more relaxed we are. And so if you look at an athlete for that, In the field of coaching, y'all probably already know this and use different language to describe it. But say you take a super athlete. I think, Michael Jordan was one of the greatest basketball players of all time. When you see him come out on the court in a game, he looked like he was half asleep. When you saw him, there's a video of him when he steals the ball, he goes down the floor in a fast break, and his tongue is flopping in his mouth. Now, that is a hugely relaxed place.
Yeah.
When the defender comes in, when he gets near the basket to try to cut him off, his tongue goes in like a lizard, and he explodes in the air to dunk the ball.
Wow.
Wow.
That relaxed state is a reservoir. And it can go up in terms of action, or it can go down in terms of interconnectedness or reception of information from the outside. But you need it in the middle. It needs to bounce in the middle, sort of.
So it needs to be balanced off. It needs to be more balanced.
Yeah. If it's all way too high or if it's all way too low,
Well, you're you're two extremes.
Yep.
Yeah. Lee,
But I wanted to talk about you have this technology now, Lee. Can we hear a little bit about what this technology you have and
yeah,
how
can we just hang on for a minute? Yeah, because it's kind of too early. There's a really important question that I would like to explore for a minute before we go into what Lee does and how he does it. Yeah, because this is really a setup for that. So I'd like to explore for a minute the invisible wound and the trauma that people go through, and specifically, I'm interested in, does everybody has one of these traumas, or are there actually human beings that are walking on this planet that don't have one of those traumas from early on when they were a child?
I think everybody has trauma. The knife gets sharp because there's a stone that it's ground against. I mean, in that sense, that trauma is good and helpful. It's the degree of it, and the degree may be the amount in a short time or a small amount for a long time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
So if you have a negative in your environment that stays there for a long time, pretty soon you just get filled up and you sort of you'll tip over with it, and tipping over is becoming more parasympathetic or freeze, or more sympathetic and in fight or flight.
Yeah. So I again feel like I got to share something because we're doing this intellectually, and I'd like to do it experientially. That's just me. So I got to share real quick something, because this is like really important in order for us to really talk about this technology that you have. I think everybody needs to somehow connect to what we're talking about. So I'm going to share a little story about me. And no, this show is not about me, but I got to do it because I think this way you can be much more helpfully to have everybody understand what this is about. So when I was 5 years old, can you imagine me? 5 years old. I had blonde hair. I was a little kid, and my mother took me to a party, and all we had at the party is ladies, and they were having coffee and tea and little desserts. Right. And then 20 minutes into the party, my mother takes me into this other room and dresses me up as a girl. And I didn't think anything of it, really, truly. I didn't think anything of it. So she dressed me up as a girl, took me out to the ladies and showed me off. And as I was standing there with my mother, and I was looking at those women, and they were all going how cute I was and blah, blah, blah. And then something hit me, Lee, and what hit me is, I know I'm a boy, but I'm not wanted as a boy, and I know that I'm not a girl. So if I'm not and I was hurting so much that I didn't think that I was going to be able to live for one more second. And then what I said, well, if I'm not wanted as a boy and if I'm not a girl, then I must be a nobody. And from that moment on, I lived the rest of my life
You put a label on yourself.
that I was a
Being
nobody.
a nobody.
And I become, because as a side benefit of this core issue, I have got mastery around how to be somebody. Okay?
You're an
so
actor.
I learned a lot, okay, in becoming somebody. But until I let this go, and I didn't let it go until 8 years ago, it was running my life. So what do you have to say about this, Lee?
That was a very threatening pattern. And that stuck. Those patterns stick. I see patterns that will stick that happen even prenatal. The mother carrying the child will have a huge trauma, will be abused, will be in a car accident, will other things. And we can see patterns that, that go back to that time. Now, when one sees one's pattern in life like you did and how it manifested, however you did that, then identification is at least a step towards having it changed. If it was too threatening, particularly if it was physical, it's way more difficult.
So why do we carry these incidents that happened to us as a child? Why do we carry them for so long? And why do we always go back to them and blame them for a lot of stuff that goes on in our life? It's always, because I was a child that happened. Oh, because I was...
My hypothesis here is that our brains carry them because our brains responded to a situation, and in responding to that situation, it kept us alive. It protected us.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't forget that. That's its job. And it won't let it go very quickly or easily if the threat is dire.
It sounds like you go into a survival
I can
mode.
relate to that one because when I was small, particularly sort of toddler age, I was a bit precocious. I was full of myself. I was full of it. I wanted to be the center of attention. I was probably a bit of a handful. And things happened, and I understood pretty quickly that people didn't want a child like that. They didn't want a child who was too precocious, who was too self-confident. And so I turned in, and you can see it in the photographs of me. I turned in to a really timid child, who wouldn't stay in anybody else's house, who cried for the first sort of 2 weeks when she started school, who was really uncomfortable in situations with other people. And I'm sure that now, with the experience I've had and the things that have happened since, I'm sure that's because I learned that was a better way to gain approval than being actually my normal self, my child, how I was as a child. And it's almost about unlearning that stuff, isn't it? It's almost like you have to become aware of it and acknowledge it and then say, oh, hang on a minute, I'm now 40-something or 50-something. And
You look like 30-something to me. I don't know.
it's not appropriate anymore.
Forget the age part. 39 and holding.
50-something.
All right,
This is a while back. This is a while back that I sorted this out. Yeah. But it's interesting stuff, and I think we all, I know I do, I've experienced it.
Thank you, Helen. So what I'm really curious about, Lee, is so in my experience of the last 30 years, and that's how long I've been in personal development, I've noticed that the people that become awake and become conscious are the ones that somehow are hit by a 2x4. it's either they go through addictions, they go through divorce, they go through losing their jobs, sometimes all of it in the same day, or they run into a telephone pole with their car. Their life is threatened, and all of a sudden, when they wake up from it, they are a different person. Now, what I see as a possibility with what you do and how you do it, and please, this would be a great time for you to tell our viewers what it is that you do and how you do it. But what I see with your technology is that people don't have to go through 5, 10, 15 years of this stuff to actually become awake, be conscious, and take control of their own lives so that the past or the future is not running them anymore. So let's hear it, what it is that you do and how you do it.
On Fox News, they ran a story of a 17-year-old boy who is here in the valley. He was a wonderful child. His parents and family and loved him, and his neighbors loved him. The teachers loved him. He was an excellent student. He was a great athlete. He played football and baseball. But on Fox News, they showed that on the homecoming game, the kickoff, his head was hit. He had a header with another boy in a block. And from that time, and then he couldn't find his way off the field, so he was concussed. But the next day, everything went south. When you said, well, something happens and then everything gets good. Well, in this case, something happened and everything got bad. Now, his grades weren't good. He couldn't play sports. Physically, he wasn't very prone to health or well-being. He had a year and a half of different kinds of therapies, and he was a problem both in school and at home. Everything changed, one hit. The brain function changed.
Wow.
It changed very fast. And it changed, and when it changed, he was changed. When we put sensors on his scalp, we could see where that brain function was clearly highly imbalanced. And so it's there that that the affiliate actually here in the valley would resonate with that brain to bring it back into balance, like two tuning forks. You strike one, the other one picks it up, this one stops, this one's still going, and now you have a loop created, a resonance loop. And that's what we do with the brain pattern in order to get it to start to dance well, from left to right hemisphere, and in order to get it to dance well from low frequencies to high frequencies. And that's what we did with this boy. And in 1 week, at 17, he's back. He's practice ready, and 1 week after that, his studies went zoomed better than he said they were before. Everything changed. He was the good kid in class and fun and at home and etc. Why? His environment didn't change. He didn't have any different thoughts. Nothing changed but his brain function. Trauma will change our brain function. And if it changes it too much, if it's physical or if it's emotional, now, here's where the female, when I spoke of earlier, is more vulnerable than we are as males. Because the female will suffer a trauma, particularly if that trauma involves a relationship, and she will be much more hurt, quote unquote, much more, because she will be affected more on both sides of her brain.
So it's only one side for a man then.
We contain it better, right?
On one side. So this what you've brought out. How does this exactly work then? Because you gave us a small example, but how does it exactly work for our audience to understand what you have?
What we do is place sensors on the scalp. We read the brain patterns in various corresponding lobes. We find out from those brain patterns where imbalances exist, and then we place the sensors back there where the imbalances exist. We give the person headphones, and we have the computer mirror a middle range with a musical note, so a resonance loop can be set up.
And can the patient watch this while it's going on?
They can, but we...
Do you like them to?
No. Most of the time, we like to get them out of the way.
With this still attached to their head?
Yeah, but I mean, most of the time we have them close their eyes and we put the chair back, and if they sleep, that's okay. That's good.
And is
The
it
brain still hears it, and the brain still works.
And Lee, is it
So
sound?
we have 50,000 clients now.
Wow.
And this, does it work?
Well, Lee, is it sound waves or
And
is
does it work
energy
for all
waves?
ages, Lee?
Well, our youngest client, I think, has been 17 months, and her dad is a doctor, and he put the sensors on her when she was sleeping. And she had an anxiety issue at 17 months where she was hyper aroused everywhere, oversensitive everywhere. So that's 17 months. And then my mother, who's 102.
Oh, wow.
Oh my goodness.
Congratulations.
102. God bless her.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Yeah.
You have a long way to go.
Oh, no, not that far. She still tells me what to do, for crying out loud. So
Good for her. That's a woman for you.
And Lee, I wanted to ask, when you put the sensors on the brain, what is emitted from the sensors? Is it tone? Is it energy? Is it electric shock? I hope not electric shock, but what actually is it that's making the fine-tuning or the bouncing in the brain?
the sensors pick up the signal from the brain. They don't put anything to the brain. They only pick up the signal from it. And they have a computer chip in them so they can pick up that signal in a very granular fashion. So granular that we can see it, we can see it in 48,000 pieces.
Wow.
Where just a few years ago, and still today, almost all EEG-based kinds of technology see it in 7 pieces,
Wow.
7 ranges.
Now, is this procedure, is it covered by insurance? Is it something that the audience member can go? Is it something that you need 1 or 2 fine-tunings? And how long do the results last?
It's the first question, is it covered by insurance? Generally not yet.
Okay.
They've completed 1 clinical trial on insomnia, and if we were to look at something that would touch on consciousness, by the way, which would be the most important aspect of well-being overall, it would be sleep. Absolutely, positively, sleep. It's very helpful for memory. It's very helpful for emotional stability. It's very, very helpful for diet and obesity. Extremely helpful. Sleep is by far the one biggest aspect of well-being that we could touch on, and that was our first clinical trial, insomnia. Wake Forest University School of Medicine did it, and that article, that poster, or the information on that study has already been published on the International Sleep Medicine Journal, and there's another article coming out on it in Brain and Behavior in the next couple months. It is phenomenal. It was just phenomenal.
So this is actually reprogramming your brain into leveling it out. How exactly do you do that on the computer? Do you push buttons? How do you exactly do that?
All the computer's actually used for is as a mirror. It's no different than if you put makeup on and you don't have a mirror, you sometimes have an issue.
Oh, yeah.
And the computer is just providing the mirror.
Yes.
And that's all it's doing. And it's, translating the electromagnetic energy from the brain into sound so it can resonate and play back.
It's almost like an autopilot on an aircraft. Autopilot can fly an aircraft, so it's like, put that on your brain and the computer balances it. Fascinating.
That's not a bad analogy at all. It sort of is like an autopilot back to a balanced state. Mm-hmm. And people that often, even though they haven't had consciousness training, even though they may not have been involved at all in spirituality, will often tell their providers after the sessions, you didn't tell me this was going to be a spiritual experience, or you didn't tell me this was going to be a consciousness-raising experience. So now, actually, the one of the bigger providers we have is a group who teaches meditation.
Oh.
Because you can.
I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah.
Once you get the brain balanced, you see, then you can coach, then you can strategize, then you can put things on the table, if you will, for one's additional well-being and growth and prosperity and fun and yikes.
Those people who are practicing meditation are sort of already doing the balancing process that your technology takes to a different level. Is that correct?
There people who are successful to be able to do meditation. You understand, in the Western world, that's a relatively small percentage, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, that's a small percentage. But those people, those people are, in fact, helping their brains to balance and grow and become aware in that way, yeah.
So with your machine, it would be faster than if you just did the meditation yourself, correct?
On steroids.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing there, Lee, is that there's a lot of different ways that people go about balancing their brains, and I think I probably have been doing it for a long time. If you think about, I've done over 12,000 shows now.
Wow.
On our network. So I've been listening to 12,000 hours of shows, and it's all about positivity. It's all about some positive environment that I've been putting myself into. And I wanted to actually ask you about, I had an experience about a month ago where I woke up on a Monday morning and my mind stopped having the chatter. And I was going like, wow. I've been able to put myself into that state through meditation and doing other things for short periods of time. But now I was experiencing it as a permanent state.
A zone,
yeah.
Almost.
And it's still going on most of the time. I would say 80+% of the time, my mind is quiet.
That's cool.
You're the exception and not the rule.
Well,
but is it where you want it to be, Steve? I mean, you could be quiet, but maybe you don't want to be quiet. So is it exactly where
this
what
is not
you want?
something that I wanted or not. This is something just happened. There's nothing that I.
Well, yeah, I know it just happened, but do you like it?
I didn't ask for it. It just happened. Yeah, I love it. I love it because I'm experiencing actually balance and harmony in my life.
You know what I was thinking, Lee? I was thinking, this is probably a little bit off no, it's not off track actually, but I was thinking that if you wanted to do something to someone's brain, or you wanted them to change, you wanted them to be something, or you wanted them to do something or that was out of their realm, could you do that with this new technology?
First of all, the technology is non-judgmental. And so all the technology is doing is trying to bring the brain back into balance.
Oh, okay.
Now, when it gets back into balance, when it overcomes some, and Steve has done it in other ways, but when our way probably is a little bit faster. It didn't take us 12,000 shows. Sorry, Steve, but the fact that we certainly encourage people to into meditation and positivity because we think that's really important for their lives. But we're technologists. I'm just a geek, and so we're only a small piece of the whole. But certainly, certainly the technology can be exceedingly helpful when it brings the brain back to balance to do many things with it. So a performer, a singer, and I can use her name because she wrote about this, so she made it public, Wynonna Judd, had never written a song. She had been in the business for 40 years. She and her mother hold more music awards than any performer in history, except for Elvis Presley. And she had never written a song.
Wow.
And so, but when she reached a certain balance state, she and her boyfriend at the time decided to write a song. And when I heard it and they performed it on stage, I cried. I mean, I thought it was incredible. Mm-hmm. But she had never done it before. Now, we didn't have anything to do with that per se, you know what I mean? I mean, we don't have any, if you want to write songs, I'll give you this protocol.
Yeah, no.
We just brought it into balance, and then, the creativity took off from there. And so I think what I heard Steve just say is when his noise quieted, everything popped up. Everything started being more,
Yeah, he was understanding it more, relaxing more and understanding it more.
Or able to hear it.
And things happen by themselves when you're in that state. It's like the state of flow. It's like that being in that relaxed state that you were talking about earlier, Lee. Athletes are in that relaxed state. They perform at their peak, and it's the same. It's the same for us. When we have that relaxation, when we're in that balance, then we perform in whatever way our talents, allow us to.
Yep.
What about children that have got ADD and ADHD?
Well, that's. I was at Wake Forest University last week and just came back from there. Mm-hmm. And they had a client, and they were trying to figure out, the person had it was a college-age female subject, and she had been on ADD meds since she was about 8. So for about 18, 16 years, I guess. And they couldn't understand why at a certain point in time, when they gave her the ADD med, which is a stimulant, then they had to start prescribing a downer. Because
that's what they do.
If you change the chemistry, the whole brain changes. And so when you push a stimulant in, especially to a child, it leaves the child very vulnerable to be addicted to that stimulant. And in terms of that, 85% of children who reach age 18, who've been on an ADD med for 6 years or more, are addicted. 85%.
I agree, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
So Lee, what does the ego think about this intervention of yours? How is it receiving it?
Mine or the clients?
The clients and yours. I'm sure you used it. I mean, you seem like, an incredible person that, you would definitely use it for yourself first, I think.
Oh yeah, I used that. That's how it came into being, right?
Yes.
I was assaulted. 4 youth, one wielding a baseball bat. I spent 8 years with post-traumatic stress and some traumatic brain injury, and I was trying to find my way out. Anything, I would try anything. Somebody said, stick beans in your ear, I would stick beans in I didn't care, right? I was to shaman in Brazil, I was all over. I just couldn't get free of it. And when people kept telling me I had to let it go, I just wanted to sock them, Well, what do you think I want to do here, for crying out loud?
I love this.
I want to let it go more than you can know. I don't want my life compromised. I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night with, the bed sopping wet from my perspiration. I don't want to be not able to go into a grocery store and get into a line because I can't stand to have anybody behind me. I don't want to live this way. I don't want to be depressed, and I don't want to be startled and not, whatever. I just couldn't get there. And so I started looking at my brain. And when I was feeling relatively good, the patterns would be up here. And when I was feeling relatively not good at all, the patterns would be down here. And I'd simply said, I'll have what he's having. Thank you very much. Now, how do I do it? And so I started to play with sound because it was a lot faster than graphics, because I'm a computer guy, right? So I played with the sound as the feedback instead of a graphic, because it's a lot faster. And here we are.
And how are you? Obviously, you feel great. You look great. You feel comfortable within yourself?
Most days.
So what do you do about the days you don't feel good?
Choke.
Put the sensors on.
How do you handle it? What do you kind of do?
At home.
I look really carefully at what it is that's not making me not ill at ease, because I know and believe that is what is helping me to grow. My mother, I remember telling my mom a couple years after I had used this on myself and was free of a lot of the symptoms, and I told Mom, I said, Mom, I'm a believer, so I would appreciate if God wants me to do something next time, just drop me an email or, leave something on my answering machine.
Let me know.
Yeah. And there was
Yes.
there was silence on the other end of the phone
Nicely.
from her. And then all at once she said, "Son, you've always been a little hard-headed."
Thanks a lot, Mom.
So be it. So be it.
So what would be one of the greatest things that you feel that you would like to do to give our audience out there to understand, or to even to get in touch with you, actually?
Well, first of all, if they can understand that what they do, think, or say, or what is done to them is often not based on their intent and motivation, but instead based on an imbalanced brain. If they can understand that, really understand it, they can then start to comprehend what I believe is forgiveness, and that changes the landscape. Yeah. You save so much time, so much energy, so much power that you can build for the good when you can just get rid of the other stuff, Stuff. Yeah.
It doesn't do you any good, obviously.
And so if they could hear that and understand that their brain is actually causing them to do that it takes probably, if we're very, very good, it takes us a half a second, but it's more likely to take us a second to a second and a half to have a thought and then act on it. And it takes the brain about 50 milliseconds, right? 5% of a second, if you will. How's that? A very fast, the brain acts, and we can't keep up. So we need to understand that we're not necessarily driven all the time by what we believe we're driven by.
Interesting. I like that.
Awesomely. All right, so we got to wind the show down. We're actually running out of time. So if any of our viewers have been touched, moved, and inspired by anything that we said or anything that we did or anything that they experienced through watching the show, I would like to invite you to go to our website at livingconsciously.tv and join our membership site. You can actually do it directly by going to www.livingconsciously.co. And also, I wanted to mention our Conscious Health Seminar that's coming up. You want to say a couple of words about that?
It's free. It's at the Vast Wellness Center. It's on October the 5th, and it's for chronic pain. And we're going to go and give you some tools and exercises. And it's also on the website, TV.com.
Awesome. And I want to thank, of course, all of our HealthCast members and our guest cast, Lee Gerdes, for being here. It's been a very educational show. I'm sure a lot of people got a lot out of it. I certainly have. And also, I want to thank all the technology people behind the glass. And I want to invite you always to come to livingconsciously.tv, to our website, and interact with us there. Leave us comments. And make sure that as our shows are being published, you are voting on our shows. The more you vote on our shows, the more it is being actually played on Comcast Channel 56, 57, and 219. And of course, last but not least, I love you all. And we'll be back here, of course, every Saturday, same time, same place, 3 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And you can always watch us on the internet at livingconsciously.tv. Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you all.
Bye.